Live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the She Leads Africa webinar. We're so excited to talk about money today and talk about what you need to know about a private trust. I'm excited to have as our guest for today, Ada Ijara from United Capital Trustees, and she's going to talk to us about what young women need to know about savings, investments, and how we can get our money to work for us. So, hello, Ada. Welcome. So, Ada, how are you today? I don't think Ada can hear us. This technical difficulties is why we started a bit late in the first place. But hopefully the connection will come back very shortly and she'll be able to gist with us. I'm really excited about the discussion that we are to have today. I think from my personal experience, being a young woman, trying to figure out finances, you never know what to do. Like, you know you should be doing something, but you don't know what that thing should be. So I oftentimes am like, okay, well, what type of savings account should I have? Like, if I'm going to invest, how should I invest and what should that look like? So I'm excited to learn more about private trust and what that means for young women and how we can set up ourselves for success in the future, but also our families, for our businesses, and for our future goals and ambitions as well. If you have questions today about finance, if you have questions about savings and investments, there is a chat button on the left-hand side that you can send questions to. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. So make sure you submit your questions and we'll try our best to get through to all of them. So I think Ada is back. So welcome,
Yay.
Ada.
Hi, Afa. How are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you for joining us. So Ada, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why are you passionate about finance and helping young women get themselves together?
Okay. My name is Ada Ijara. I'm a lawyer by training, but I've spent the better part of my career in financial services. Currently in United Capital, I plan estates for a living, and in this role, my role cuts across, a lot of things basically. In addition to estate planning, there's also the investment, evaluating investment potential, being able to advise my clients, managing their trust assets, and all things wealth management, which is ultimately the goal of private trust.
Great. Thank you. So the first question that we have today is, what exactly is a private trust? I think before I started working with United Capital, I'd never heard of it before. And I imagine most of the people who are tuning in today don't even know what this thing is. So can you break it down, for regular people, what exactly is a private trust? And why does it matter and how does it compare?
A private trust is a legal relationship. And typically there are three parties to a private trust arrangement. Now, ultimately, the directions or the instructions regarding what he or she wants to achieve, okay, and we will call this person the settlor. Now, the settlor instructs the trustee, who is basically the middleman, and the trustee will basically hold assets, on behalf and for the benefit of the beneficiaries down the line. Now, in setting up a private trust, there are a few things that are quite important. We call them the three certainties. So you have the certainty of intention, where the settlor, who I've mentioned earlier, is an individual who's giving the instructions on what he wants to be done to his assets. Okay, so there's a certainty of intention that the settlor intends to set up a private trust for the purpose of, say, for instance, paying for his children's school fees. Okay. Now we have the certainty of subject matter, and that basically refers to what are these assets, what are these things that the settlor wants the trustee to hold in trust. Okay, and then there's a certainty of objects, and the certainty of objects basically deals with who are the beneficiaries. We have to be very clear, even when it's a charitable trust, you have to be very clear on who exactly the beneficiaries are. Okay, so these are some of the things that you need to consider in setting up a private trust. and on board, who's able to hold your hand through the process. It's not as daunting as it sounds, because a lot of us think that, oh, trusts are things that only the very wealthy, the very affluent, something that they do. But regular folks that like you and I can have a private trust, and you can use it for any number of things.
Great. So Anna, can you give us an example of kind of one of your clients, or kind of how they have utilized a private trust to help their financial situation and make sure that they were planning well for the future?
Okay. And there are a number of examples, really. Like I said, there has to be the certainty of intention. What is it exactly that, what is it, that he or she is actually trying? I've given the example of setting trust. Say a client has 3 children, 4 children, and say has gone through a divorce, for instance, okay, and is now maybe has custody of the children. I'm talking about a scenario where has full custody of the children, and she has concerns about her children's education continuing uninterrupted. So in that scenario, basically, the settlor would put aside some funds. You could do like a lump sum to start with, or you can have like you earn a salary, so on a monthly basis you could ask for a certain percentage of your salary to go to the trust. Now these funds are invested. There's a trust arrangement. These funds are given to the trustee. The trust basically ensures that the children's fees are taken care of, whether or not, the settlor is around, or the settlor has lost her job, or any number of, there are any number of things really that can happen. It's not just death. There could be job loss, there could be disability or something. But once you have those funds set aside, it gives the client that peace of mind to know that, oh, my children will go to school regardless of what my current situation is, because you've had the foresight to set up a private trust.
Great. So essentially anyone who's interested in securing their financial future, putting money aside and working towards a goal should think about setting up a private trust. It's not just for wealthy people.
Exactly.
Perfect. So how can, what is the major difference between a trust and a savings account? I think most of us automatically, we want to put money aside, so you just get a savings account. But now I'm hearing that a private trust can do that and so much more. So what are the major differences that young women should think about when they're looking at their different investment options?
Okay, thank you. Now, typically, I've already defined what a private trust is. A savings account is a deposit, type account that most of the banks have. And it affords the customer the ability to set aside funds, to save funds and earn a modest interest. Okay, but a private trust, on the other hand, for me, I would just, basically amplify the differences to be the returns you get on your savings is a lot higher than what you would get on a regular savings account. So that's one. The return on investment is higher, and I'm sure lots of us would be happy to hear that. And it also gives you access. Now, there's some savings accounts that some of the banks currently run, and they tell you, oh, you can't take more than three times and things like that within a stipulated period. And if you do take money more than 3 times a month, for instance, you will not earn any interest for that month. Now, the way the private trust works is that it can be revocable or irrevocable. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. Now, like I said, in setting up the trust, you get to decide the terms. You can say to us as your trustees that, oh, I don't want to be able to touch this money. I want at least a minimum of 5 to 10 years before, I can begin to have access to it. Or you can leave it open and say, you know what, I want to always have access to these funds, which is why I say you can also have course to, pull from the funds if you have an emergency type situation or something. So that comes in pretty handy. And then again, in terms of, what a trust can achieve for you, a savings account, if anything were to happen to you as a customer of the bank, now, I basically think that, oh, if something happens to me, my next of kin can have this money, will get this money. But that's not ultimately the way it works. What it does, what that does when you fill out the next of kin column in your account opening form is that this is the individual who can now come to the bank, in the event of maybe your passage or incapacity can come to the bank, but will have to come with some sort of evidence to show that he or she is entitled to that money. And if the individual left a will, then they could come with they would have to get a grant of probate, and that takes forever. It could literally take, years to go through the probate process. And then in a situation where the customer didn't even leave a will, that is a whole different kettle of fish, because he or she would have to come back with the letter of administration, basically, in order to have access to the funds. So a private trust, essentially, you get hired, you have access to those funds subject to the terms of the trust deed, which defines and gives the trustee instructions on how to manage the trust. And then thirdly, your named beneficiaries get those funds, no questions asked, minimal fuss, as against what will happen when you have a regular bank account, savings account.
Great. So we're hearing that, of course, there's better interest rates. We're hearing that it's easier to set up and manage, and kind of whatever your directives are, the trustees will follow it. So you won't have confusion in case something happens or there's any legal issues. So I think for many people, they're always nervous about any type of confusion in case something does happen. And so it's great to hear that that process will be solved and will be easy to manage. So you mentioned an education type of trust, but Ada, what are the different types of trusts that you can set up, either like formally or different ways that people have utilized the trust to help them reach their financial goals?
Okay. A private trust, there are two different types of private trusts. Now, under the private trust, you can have a living trust or an inter vivos trust. Now, as the name implies, it's set up in such a way that, the stipulations of the trust kick off during the lifetime of the settlor. Okay? Testamentary trust, that kicks in at the death of the settlor. Okay? And typically, trusts can either be implied or express or constructive, but that's just a whole bunch of legalese. But, suffice it to say that there are two types of private trust, or the private trust can be divided into two. You can have the living trust, which will kick off while you're alive, and then the testamentary trust, which kicks off when the settlor passes on. But in both scenarios, what essentially happens is that a living trust can achieve a whole number of things. Okay, it depends on I always tell my clients that no one trust it's not a one-size-fits arrangement. It will depend on your peculiar situation. I gave the example earlier on of a woman maybe who's had a divorce and has 3-4 children. Hers would be different from, say, someone who's married and has no children, or maybe, say, another woman who's maybe in her 40s and has never been married and, has concerns with, what happens if I'm ill, and, who is going to be able to take these decisions for me in terms of if I need medical care and I need to be flown abroad and things like that. Would I have to, if I have a trust, then I'm sure that my trustees can come in and say, let's have her air freighted to receive medical care. So it can do a whole number of things, and it would just depend on your peculiar situation. So have very frank and open discussions with your trustee. You would need to explain your circumstances, to your trustee, so that, the trustee will be better able to advise you properly on how to go about setting up a trust and things that should really be a major part of the trust. Okay, so if you have a child, you have 3 children, and one of them has special needs, you can couch the trust in such a way that, in as much as the other children get an equal share, you can ensure that the trust started ensuring that the child that has special needs is able to access funds for their hospital visits and things like that. So, yeah.
I think what I like most about what you just shared is the opportunity and ability to really create something that works for you. I know whenever I go to the bank, they just say, this is how it is, take it or leave it. And I always get so frustrated because I feel like I'm not important. It's because my money is small that they don't pay attention to me. But what I'm hearing is that, the trustees will work with you to create something that really speaks to your needs. So, of course, it doesn't matter if you're a big-time client or a small-time client. You can get something that's specialized to your circumstances, and they'll work with you to grow and move that along. as you work towards your goals. I don't think any other type of financial institution or financial product offers that. And as a young woman, actually having someone listen to you, I think is really critical and important. So that's something that I'm really excited about. I'd love to learn more about the education trust. I know a lot of people are worried about school fees. If you have kids, even if you don't have kids, that is impending doom for some people. So how can I set up an education trust? What if I don't even know how much money is going to cost for my kids to go to school? How could I work with a trustee to come up with a trust that makes sure that my kids are sorted and their education is taken care of?
Okay. Increasingly, we're getting a lot of inquiries from clients about setting up an education trust because, life happens, and that's the truth. It's not just death. Like I mentioned earlier, it could be job loss, it could be disability. But for some reason, if at some point in the future, you're not able to afford your child's fees and things like that, in having the foresight to establish an education trust, it gives you that peace of mind to know that regardless of what happens, or if your circumstances change, your kids' education will be uninterrupted. Now, I'm sure a lot of us have, friends or relatives who maybe when, their father or mother passed away and the children had to be pulled out of, an expensive school to be put in a less expensive school. And, life, as the children know it, you'll just do like a 360-degree change. So what we advise our clients and what, we're getting, more inquiries for and more, more requests for is to set up an education. Now, it's a bit different, like I mentioned already, about the savings accounts and all, because quite a lot of the banks have savings account plans, directed at, setting aside money for your children's fees. But private trust, like I said, is something that, you're able to, if you want to set aside a lump sum, you've come into some money or bonus, or I don't know, you've won the lottery or something, or even at your child's naming ceremony. I have clients who the money that, guests and family give them at their baby's naming ceremonies, they bring that money in bulk and they say, you know what, I'm going to use this to set up a private trust. And we sit down with them and say, you know what, your child is, I don't know, a month old, 3 months old, and your plan is that you want that child to go to Harvard, or any of the other Ivy League schools or something. Okay, so you're able to, we'll sit down with you and we'll decide, based on what's going to be comfortable for you, what you and your husband or you alone will be able to set aside on a monthly basis or quarterly or biannual, depending on, it has to be, like I said, there's no one size that fits all. So for them, we decide, okay, fine, based on your cycle, your business owner and your clients pay you on a quarterly basis. Obviously, you might not be able to do a monthly payment, monthly remittance, okay? But on a quarterly basis, you'll be able to divert X sum to the private for your child. And then this ensures that, your child's education continues uninterrupted. And the beauty of it, like I said, is that you can give, if it's, you can set it up in such a way to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to preclude myself or any down the road from being able to terminate this trust, okay? Or being able to even access these funds up until when the child is XYZ, X age and all that. So private trust is something flexible. It works with it works with, in terms of your money, how you get your money and all that. We can basically structure something that works for you, and you have that added peace of mind and knowing that this money will be for my children. And then again, I should mention, for a private education trust, we pay directly to the school. Okay, so even if you're not there, no guardian or family member will be able to have access to that money directly. The funds are always paid directly to the school. Then if you couch the trust deed in such a way that it says that funds can be given to the guardian, for the upkeep of the child, that's something that can also be factored in. Okay.
Great. So Ada, we just got a question from Fatima Kamenge. She wanted to know about single young women. So of course the mamas, they care about the education trust, but for single young women, what are the benefits of a private trust for them? And she wanted to better understand, how is a private trust different from a mutual fund or an independent investment account?
Okay. Now that's a very good. Okay. Now that's a very good question. A private trust is different. It's different in the sense that, in as much as a mutual fund or or a fixed deposit, a normal fixed deposit that you could walk into a bank to do, it's different in the sense that, remember we talked about what happens if you're no longer there. you know a private trust gives it gives you an added layer of peace of mind, in the sense that that at the time of setting up a trust, we will always ask you to have named beneficiaries. And these named beneficiaries, it could be your sister, or I don't know, brother, or anybody really. You have that option to actually name beneficiaries, and these named beneficiaries will get those monies, if anything were to happen to you, God forbid, no questions asked. Okay, after the due diligence, find out, okay, this person is who he or she says he is. Okay, then we'll go ahead and give you those named beneficiaries the money. Now, for a mutual fund and other investment type vehicles and all that, it's fine. But I always tell my clients that it's important to diversify your risk. And a private trust is something that, look at it as a basket has holes. Look at it as an umbrella, really, that covers everything that you've been able to acquire. Everything that you're able to acquire over the course of your lifetime. And it doesn't matter whether you're young, whether you're single or anything. It's important that you have a say. Like I mentioned earlier on, life happens. So it's important that if you're not there, whatever monies or stuff that you've been able to acquire over, you have a say in what actually happens to them. And I don't mean to make people have this morbid type feeling today, but it is important that we begin to think, beyond, I'm just 25. I just want to save money to buy a car and things like that. Yes, you can save money. You can set up a mutual fund. But do it, through a private trust, And like I said, our returns are competitive. So it's not like you're just going to be getting very low rates in terms of returns on those funds.
Great. That's very helpful. So, Fatima, I hope that we answered your question there. Now, I know one thing that I'm nervous about, a lot of my friends are nervous about, as economies are shaking, in different countries, banks are going down. You can't even get your money from the ATM. They're putting restrictions. Even though it's your own money, they're now putting restrictions on you, on how you can access it. When you travel, you can't do this, this, and this. So, Ada, simple question. Is my money safe if I put my money in a private trust?
Okay, I was kind of expecting that question. Yes, your money is safe if you put it in a private trust, and I'll tell you why. In the first place, we're not going to do anything risky in terms of where we place those funds. Okay, currently in Nigeria, we have the Trustee Investment Act of 1990. And that has actually laid out, the sort of investment outlets that trustees can, invest the funds of their clients. Okay, so typically we will not do equities, as the high risk nature of investing in equities. Them in treasury bills, bonds, fixed. These are safe instruments. Okay, with your principal is never eroded. Okay, and then there's stable income too that accrues on that principal. So yes, you don't have to worry about the safety of your funds. Your funds in a private trust with a trust company, extremely safe.
Okay, everyone heard it. So we'll just say it again. Your money is extremely safe with a private trust. So what kind of returns can someone expect when using a private trust? Are they guaranteed returns, or do they fluctuate, with the stock market? And how would those typically compare to how would it compare to a traditional savings account? I don't think I make any money from my savings account. I just see the money there and it's not growing. So this is really just a personal one for me. Like, how do I get more money in my own accounts? That's it.
Okay. In setting up a trust and putting aside money in a trust account, now, as earns, are typically higher than traditional savings account. Now, in factoring this, you do know that there are market realities that, one has to contend with. in financial services, I want to assure you of is that rates will fluctuate, you see, but at no point in time will your principal be eroded. Okay. Now, if you put in 100 in the stock market, and you want to call upon those funds in a month or 2 months or 3 months, it's possible that the funds might have either dipped or increased. Okay. But with the private trust, you're assured that your money is safe and it continues to grow. The rates, the returns on that trust account will most likely fluctuate realities. For instance, at this time last year, clients were getting significantly higher returns than they are currently, which we all know is a factor of what's going on in the economy right now. But the peace of mind that they do have is that on a month-on-month basis, their money is accruing interest, and they'll never come to us today and say, oh, I'd like to get my money, and they're told, oh, sorry, Oga, your money, your principal is we started out with $1 million and now it's 800,000. No, that doesn't happen. But in terms of the rate of the return on that principal, yes, it would fluctuate due to market realities. But anybody has done, you know what I mean? But you will always get returns.
Okay, that's very helpful. Now, say we're excited and Ona, she submitted a question and she wanted to know, okay, what is this company that runs this private trust and who do we go to talk to set one up? And I think the third part of that question would be, how much money do you need to have to start with in order to start a private trust?
Okay, they're great questions. I work in United Capital Trustees. We're the oldest trust company in Nigeria. We've been around for over 50 years. You have the assurance when you deal with us of knowing that we've been in the business for since, in terms of, you can have confidence and know that in dealing with us that your monies will be safe, trust advice, possible. Now, in terms of how much you can use to set up a private trust, okay, now this typically will depend on your situation. I've said before that no one size fits all. We will sit down with you, we'll have a frank and open conversation. This is how much I earn. This is how much I can set aside. Based on, what will work for you. We're able to sit down with you and decide that. So there's no fixed amount. Okay, and then convenience is also very key. So you could either start with a lump sum and then probably do like maybe smaller monthly payments, or just grow from, this month I'll do this, and any cash I'll be able to put aside a bit more and things like that. So it will not bring. And we're based in Lagos. We have offices in Abuja and in Port Harcourt. And and I'm sure the details of our address and everything will be circulated after this. Okay, just get on our website. It's www.unitedcapitalp.com, and you get all the details, and all our contact details will be there. Yeah. Thank you.
So Ada, is there an interview process? Like, can someone be turned down from setting up a private trust?
Turned down? That's an interesting question. Why would we turn anybody down? In setting, we're very big on KYC, that's know your customer. So obviously we want to be a vehicle for, terrorism and things like that. So we're very big on KYC. So I would assume that maybe turning anybody down would be maybe if we're not comfortable that he or she is who he or she says he is, and, the source of the funding and all that. But if you're able to, we have this conversation with you, and we ask you for your KYC document, identification, proof of address. Normal, regular bank would ask you for an opening an account. Those are the details we'll ask for, documents would ask for. And then, like I said, we'll have these discussions with, with our prospective clients. And I don't know, to turn someone down, no, that really doesn't happen.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Okay, so everyone, you've heard that. There are no minimums, there are no maximums. Kind of United Capital is ready to listen to the goals that you have and what you're trying to achieve with your financial plan with the private trust. and they will work with you. So don't be nervous and think that, oh, I don't have enough money to start saving or investing. No, the best time to start is right now. And you can visit their website, unitedcapitalplcgroup.com, or you also can get the details from the SLA website, shilysafrica.org. Now, Ada, I think private trust is a great tool, but what are some of the things that you've seen, some of the mistakes young women make when it comes to managing their finances, and things that you wish they would stop doing, or things that people should be doing earlier and they wait until it's too late and they start to realize, oh, okay, I need to get myself together?
Yeah, I think the first lesson really in finding, for everyone, not just young ladies, is being able to delay gratification. Okay, now you start working, say at 24, 25, and you've thought to yourself, oh, you have, I don't know, 26, 30 years to work. And you think, oh, that means I don't have to start saving now. I can wait until I'm 35. I can wait until I'm 40. There's really no rush. Now, I say to, people, all the time that it's never too early, to start saving. You enter the job market, the minute you start working, thinking about your retirement for it, so that you're not choked. And when you have a longer investment horizon, it's much better for you, because at that point you're able to, get a good asset mix of things you want to invest in. Okay, you can do, in addition to stocks and all that, you can actually take a position. You can invest in blue chip stocks, from say when you're 20, 25. And then, hopefully by the time you're approaching retirement, those shares have quadrupled in size and all the rest of it. Even in terms of being able to purchase land, for people that bought land in Moe, say, I don't know, 10 years ago, it was a lot cheaper than what it is currently. So in terms of financial planning, I think the key word basically is delaying gratification and starting early. Start early, save as much as you can, but remember to treat yourself anyway, because I know that sometimes you save so much, it feels like you're punishing yourself, but in saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to give myself a treat this year or this month or this week and all that, while having, very clear-cut, goals about where you want to get to in, say, 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. Okay, so start early, delay, that's basically it.
Yes. So not every time popping bottles and buying shoes, everyone. Sometimes we wait. There's one, we should wait. Okay, that's really helpful. So those are all the main questions and the points that we have today. Ada, any closing statements on things that we should be thinking about when it comes to a private trust and getting ready and planning for our financial goals?
Final words. I've said a bit of it already. Final words. I would advise women, we need to take charge of our, financial goals and all that. For a lot of women, their retirement plan is their husband. It's not a bad thing, okay? But it's important that we're self-sufficient and able to think and plan for ourselves and think and plan for our families as well. Okay, as women, we have a special role to play, in marriage. You're able to articulate yourself and begin to plan and set aside, monies and whatever for a rainy day. Talk to a professional. It's never too early to start. You don't have to wait until you have children before you have a private trust. You don't have to wait until you have children or until, before you start a private trust. Start even when you're single, let it grow. And the beautiful thing about a living trust is that it grows with you. Okay, running it during your lifetime, and you can tinker with it, as time goes on. Don't be put off by, oh, it's something that only older people do or wealthy people do. Get as much advice as you can. Get professional help. Really, the trick about things is that if you don't know something, don't shy away from it. You should be self-informed, and when you're informed, you're better able to make informed decisions, as we say. Okay, so that's about it, really.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ada, for joining us today. Really appreciate you sharing your time. Everyone, we're really excited to be working with United Capital and sharing this free financial advice. And we're excited to share more articles and tools and tips to help you reach your financial goals. So make sure that you visit chilisafrica.org. We will be sharing those tips. If you're interested in talking to a financial advisor, United Capital will be providing free opportunities to chat with members of their staff, and we'll be sending that out after today's webinar. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.